Hey everyone, and welcome to this section of this course where I'm going to be making a rocky beachfront. Now, this lecture is all about the landscape. So with each of these episodes, I'm going to make a certain portion of it before the episode, and then in the episode I will explain what I did during that time, and then go forward with the project. So for the landscape, this is what I came up with before the episode. I've got this island here, and I've got an ocean around it. Now for the island, I just used a default Unreal terrain and sculpted it with the Unreal brushes. I didn't use any world machine for this. I didn't do anything like that. I just used the Unreal terrain system. And then for the ocean, I went and added the water materials package to my scene again. And then I duplicated a bunch of water planes. There's like 1,000 of them. And that was the best way that I could do it. I actually ended up having quite a difficult time with it as far as trying to get the different kinds of water planes in there. So I just ended up settling with the default one, and I ended up creating thousands of them. And so that's what you see here. And while the foam isn't exactly as realistic as I would like, I think it's just going to have to do for this scene. And if I need a close-up shot of water, then I can go in and pick up one of their meshes that are pre-made to look really real with the waves, and I'll just put that in the scene and then hide this water for that shot. But for shots where I'm going to be looking at a large portion of the island or maybe out of the water, this will do just fine. So for this portion of this series, I just wanted to create a landscape material and get some materials painted on here to get us started. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. I'm going to add a material. It's going to be called landscape. There we go. And in the material editor, I'm going to add a vector, or it's a constant 3 vector. I'm going to use these as placeholders for images for the time being. This is how we're going to create layers for the landscape materials. I believe I'm going to need 9 of them this time. I've already imported my Megascans assets, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, one more, 9. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to create a landscape blend node. And by the way, I feel the need to mention that these episodes are going to be mostly unscripted. Every process of creating a level is very unique, and there's lots of tweaking that goes on, so there's no way I could go in and script every interaction between me and the interface. So the first layer is going to be rock, then we're going to do rippled sand. There's going to be many types of sand for this one. This one's rippled sand. And then the next layer, that's going to be, let's see here, bridge, trampled sand. Alright, I've completed the base color portion of this material. Here is my node setup. There's all the albedo textures for the materials I'll be using, connected to a layer blend, connected to the base color. So now I can select my landscape and drag the material into the landscape material slot. And now we need to create our layer info. So I'm going to click the plus next to all these. I'm going to choose weight blended layer. Click OK. And then go ahead and do that for all of the rest of your layers. This is what we've got to work with so far. So I think it's time to start adding roughness maps as well as normal maps into here, because right now they're looking very flat as far as textures go. Alright, I've added in all the roughness maps and it looks a lot better on the landscape. Now we're going to see how it looks with normals. So just to catch you up on what I've been doing, I ended up putting all the textures, all the roughness textures, all the normal textures into the material. And then I put a landscape coordinate node into the UV slot for each of those materials. And then I tiled it up a bit so that the textures are larger. And then on the landscape itself, I just began experimenting, painting some materials on to see how they look. And they're looking great. And now it's going to be a matter of painting the materials onto the landscape. And the blend setup really helps, because just notice how well these things blend here. This wet sand and the footprint sand. So the blending is really going to be in our favor here. I just have to wait for the landscape to register with all these textures, because they are 8K resolution. Okay, so I decided to fill most of the area with sand, And now we're going to start painting on wet sand around the border line here. So I'm going to grab my wet sand brush here, just start painting. It turns out a lot of the problem was being caused by there being too many textures all in one spot. So that's something to keep in mind when you go to create your landscape. So I'm just going to go around in a circle and paint the entire thing. Then I'm going to assume this area right here is the most traveled part of the island. I'm going to try and make this one little area right here look really, really good. So I want to put some wet sand footprints. Right here. Oh yeah, this is going to be an extremely cool shot. This is going to be super cool. So this is where I'm going to put some footprints. And we're going to blend all this in a little better later. I just want to make sure I block out some of the basic stuff. We don't need the tool strength to be 1. Definitely don't need it to be 1. I'd prefer it to be much lower, because then we can blend it in with the wet sand a little better. So it's like they tracked the moisture along this side of the cliff over here. Just barely, just a little bit. Was that too much? I think that was too much. You don't need to make it too much. I just want it to be noticeable. Okay, now I'm gonna go put the wet sand footprints back. All along here. So we've got this kind of shot. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. So it looks like they were walking up that area. They walked up this area. That looks very good. Very good. So now I'm gonna mess around with this area a little more. Gotta think what else would work here. If I'm going to put rock here, I think we're gonna be pushing it to try and paint it on. I think that might be too many textures. But we'll let the shaders compile. And if the shaders say it's all good, then we'll go with it. But yeah, it's pushing it. Nope, I don't think that's gonna do it. So if we're going to add rock along this side, which we may not even need to do, we're going to have to use rock assets, 3D models, instead of just these typical painting. But we can still take good advantage of the painting. Wow, that looks good. I'm very impressed with this so far. Very, very impressed. So let's begin moving around the landscape and just adding a few more angles to it. So for instance, over here, we could make this be a rocky beach instead of the typical sandy beach. So I'm going to cover that area, and then we'll let the shaders compile, and then we'll see if that's okay. And if it looks good. So that is what we would be looking at. I don't think I really like it. I think there's potential for, I think there's a place for it. I do. I think there's a place for it. Oh, I mean, that being said, we are on a tool strength 0.2. Yeah, I think there's a place for it, but I don't think it's there. And I'm gonna have to change that back eventually. Let's try the trampled sand. I think that would work pretty well. I was excited to try this one out. So over here it looks really good. I think we need to put some of that over here actually. It may not like it. We're gonna have to try and replace a lot of the foot area over here with this, because I really think this is a great trampled sand material. Even better than the typical sand. Alright, so that's about as much as I want to do on the landscape for this episode. The next episode is landscape details, where I'm going to be putting in some assets and maybe some trees and touching up the ground here and just anything else that we need to do for the landscape itself.